His heart is all about forgiveness, and even when you bend, break, or walk away, the Lord will always take you back. For aspiring songwriter and country music artist Corey Layne, traditional country music runs deep into his family roots. Corey, a third-generation musician born and raised in the foothills of the Cumberland Plateau in East Tennessee, has desired to bring old-style country music back to life. But his life hasn't always been easy. His new song, Bend or Break, is all about his radical redemption. This is his story. This is today's Nashville. This is faith. Corey, your name has been buzzing around, not only in Nashville, but everywhere. Thank you so much for inviting me into your church.
Well, this is a place where people come and who are broken, and and I was broken. Well, I just love this place. So.
Well, it is an honor to sit down with you. I mean, I've had people call me and say, "You have to talk to Corey Layne." So,
it's an honor to sit with you too.
Thank you. Tell me how you got to this place from the hills of East Tennessee.
Southeast Tennessee. Yeah. South Pittsburgh, Tennessee.
Let's go back and then tell me how God has led you through. You have an amazing story.
At a young age, being from South Pittsburgh, Tennessee, it was a town back then of 1,500 people. We maybe have 3,000 people there now. It's well known for lodge cast iron skillets and stuff like that. That's where they're made. But I was a pastor's kid, and as you can tell, and I just tell everybody I was beat up in the third grade, and they colored on me, and it wouldn't wash off. So, I went through some traumatic stuff at a young age. I didn't have a childhood. I have a couple of memories of good times, but I don't really have many.
Can you share what happened, or what was?
Yeah, from the age of about 4 or 5, it's hard to gauge that when you're that young, but age 4 to 5 until I was about 12 years old, I was actually raped and by a couple of family members and another person, and it went on for years, and it just you could see pictures. My mom, she'll look at a picture, and she'll see another picture, and she says, "I see the difference, in the smile. One, I'm just cheesing, and the other one, I'm just sad." And so that led me down a long road of addiction. And
did you not tell your parents or anything?
I ended up telling my parents, I think I just turned 18 or I was 17, about to turn 18. And I told them because one of the people that had done it to me was about to pass, and I needed to get it out, because if I didn't, then I felt like I would have an issue. But it did give me a lot of issues, and I went through a lot of stuff as growing up. It wasn't easy, especially being a pastor's son.
And you were going to church and everything and couldn't tell anybody?
Yeah, no. I had a gun put to the back of my head at about 4 or 5 years old and said, "If you say anything, I'm going to kill your mom, your dad." So I didn't say anything until, it was close to that time. But God takes things like that. I always say God allows things to happen. And I believe that God allowed that to happen, because if He would not have allowed it to happen, and I know it's hard, and people ask a question, why all the time? Why this and why that? Well, that's not for us to, we can't really answer those questions. And God, He created the earth. We were born into sin, And there are sinners on the earth, and there are bad people on the earth. That's why it happened. But if it wouldn't have happened, I wouldn't have been able to reach some of the people I've been able to reach, just from that alone. It led me down a long road of drugs. The drugs were hard.
How old were you then?
I actually started when I was about 17. August 17th of this year will be 7 years, year completion. Yeah, I'll be clean 7 years, August 17th of this year.
Tell me what happened during those, teenage years, and were you walking with the Lord, or did you walk away?
Actually, early teens, I was walking with God. But then I started getting made fun of in high school because I sang. So they started using words, derogatory things towards me about it. So I had to prove them wrong. And by doing that, I ended up, I had a daughter at 17. And it was, she's great. She's beautiful.
How old is she now?
She's 20.
20.
Yes, she's 20. Woo. I did, but she wasn't a mistake at all. She's a blessing. I was a bad father for a long time because of the issues that I had, and when I finally decided after everything had happened to change, I wanted to be a good dad again, and I wanted to be a good man. I always say God put his finger in the ground and literally pulled me out of hell. I overdosed over 17 times. It was bad.
When was that time that God just pulled you out and said, "Okay, Corey"?
I went through a windshield, actually. I was driving, going about 65, 70 miles an hour. And I always say God put a fire hydrant in front of the highway because it was heavy traffic day. And I took too many drugs and I blacked out. And when I blacked out, I came to when I had went off the road and tried to turn off, hit a fire hydrant, went through the windshield. And, if there was a before and after, you'd see this big scar or this big cut of stitches on my face. I have bones still in my face that are not okay. And but a man pulled over the side of the road, and I kept trying to look at his face. And he actually got me out of the truck. And he somehow, I don't know where the bottle of water came from, but he had a bottle of water in his hands. And he poured the bottle of water on his finger. And he put his finger in my face. And he just kept doing that. And then he touched the back of my neck. And he said, "Is there anything I can do for you, son?" And I kept trying to see him, and it was like looking at the sun, literally. And I was mad, and I said, "No." So after the wreck and everything, it was a little bit, later down the road, I decided to get help. I went to, and I'm not ashamed to say I went to rehab and decided to make a change in my life, but that was the day. But when I left rehab, nobody wanted me to come home. And I ended up sleeping in the snow in Pigeon Forge for about 3 days. I had these women pull up and they said, "Hey, do you want to go up to our cabin?" And they were using. And I was like, no. And nobody wanted me to come home. But then, do you know when you just say, "I'm done, I give up"? That's what I did. And I put my head down and said, "I just give up, God. I've been serving you for a year now. And what for?" And then all of a sudden, after I did that, this old man pulled up and he looked at me and he said, he grinned, he said, "Is there anything I can do for you, son?" And I knew the voice. And he said, "Get in the car." And he said, "Where do you want to go?" And I said, "I want to go home. I just want to go home." So he called a family member, and the family member said that they felt compelled to say yes. And, the whole time we were riding from Pigeon Forge to Knoxville to the bus station because he was going to take me. He paid for me to get a bus ticket. He fed me, but he was smiling, tears rolling down his eyes, and he was telling me he loved me and how much he had loved me my whole life. How the things about me that nobody else knew. He was going in depth, and I was just like, wow, what is going on here, you know? And then he gave me a phone number after he had dropped me off, and he grabbed me, hugged me, told me he loved me, just started crying. He said, now make sure you call this number. It's the same number I called from, but here's a piece of paper, and call me right as soon as you get home. And I was like, okay. And I got home. I said, hey, I need to call the number that called the phone. I've got the number right here. It's the same number. When I called, it was a lady that answered the phone. And I said, I need to speak to so-and-so. I can't even remember the name now. And she said, there's not been a man here that's lived here in about 25, 30 years. And I said, no, this was a cell phone. This guy came, he called this phone. I'm returning the call. He wanted me to call him and let him know I was okay. And she said, honey, this is a landline. She said, this isn't a cell phone. And I knew I was in the presence of God.
Yeah.
I knew.
Corey, we're going to pick up that right where we left off in a minute, and we're going to find out who that man was. Corey, we were talking about the man that you couldn't find. Who do you think it was?
I have no doubt in my heart that it had to have been God, you know, Jesus or something. You know, I believe it was Jesus, but because of the love that I saw and heard, you know what I mean? And when he touched my chest after I hadn't told him my name and said Corey, that was a big hit. So it was like a grace moment, you know, and he was just extending it right then.
And you've written, or you're going to sing something about that.
Yeah, Amazing Grace. Yeah, and with my friend Josh here, and he's going to be playing. He's a phenomenal guitar player and loves Jesus too. So. Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me. I once was lost, but now I'm found. I was blind, but now I see. I was blind, but now I see.
Oh, Corey, it's beautiful. Joshua, beautiful. Are you guys recording together or just?
We're just getting
met.
Yeah, we just met. Just
met.
not
Look.
Maybe we will now soon.
a couple of weeks
Wow.
ago, wasn't it?
Beautiful.
Yeah, I believe we're going to be doing a lot of things together.
Corey, tell me what happened when you got home.
When I got home, I was married before, you know, and it was so crazy. When I got home, I ended up going to jail. It was nuts. And when I went into the jail, you know, when you go to rehab, you can't pay things and like child support and stuff like that. So my ex-wife had actually called the police and told them where I was. So I got arrested. I've never been, a criminal. I did criminal stuff with the drugs and everything, but I was in the jail cell, and I said, you know what, God? Now I'm done. When I get out of here, I am going and I'm relapsing, and I'm going to just go out with a bang. And then all of a sudden, I look on the floor, and there was a Bible in the cell laying on the floor. And I was like, oh my goodness, okay, what? Because I knew it was like, even when we have experiences like I had with, when the driving from Pigeon Forge to Knoxville, still I'm human and my faith wavers. Like Peter's faith wavered walking on the water. And I saw the Bible and I grabbed it and I said, you know what, I said, God, I'm just going to do one of those flip things and see. And I did. And boy, was I in for a surprise. Opened it up and it went to Jeremiah, the sorrowful, weeping prophet. That's what he's called. And he said, why is my pain unending? Why are you to me like a brook that never stops? Like, why don't you hear me? And then it says, and then God said, if you'll return to me, I'll make you my mouthpiece. And, it goes deeper. And I said, so God, you want me to talk to these guys in jail in my hometown, the people that knew who I was, you want me to talk to them? And it was like, yes. So I ended up that night, I walked out and I said, hey guys, 22 or 23 people in the pod. I said, I'm supposed to tell you guys about Jesus. Is that okay? And they said, yeah. So for 2 months, I started telling them about God. And I told them we had a meeting every night. 21, I believe, it was 21, 22 gave their hearts to Jesus through that. And I didn't push religion on them. I pushed love, and I pushed the truth about how God is just, but God is love. Everybody always wants it to be God is just love, and God's not a just God. I wanted them to know that God is all of that. And if you just receive Jesus into your heart, you'll be saved.
And Corey, before we take a break, because we're going to continue that story, I want you to play, God is taking you down a new road to country music. And will you play one song that will lead us in?
To country music?
Or your song that you were talking about earlier.
Oh, this is actually my new single. It's called Between George Strait and George Jones.
Okay, can you play a little
sure,
bit?
Yeah. Well, I saw her sitting there beside that empty chair, singing along with those tunes. And I took one more drink from my glass and stood up and walked across that room. I reached out my hand, asked her to dance. She could have easily shot me down. She stood up and slipped into my arms, and we started spinning around. She laid her head on my shoulder. She let me hold her closer than I thought she would. I felt my heart beat like thunder from the spell I fell under out on that old hardwood. From Marina Del Rey to He Stopped Loving Her Today, and a couple other great country songs, we fell in love somewhere in between George Strait and George Jones.
Corey, awesome.
Yeah, I love that song.
We'll be right back. about your jail time
Okay.
and getting out and where God has taken you.
Well, so make a long story short, I felt like I should tell the guys that I was going to get out on June 17th. I was supposed to spend 6 months in jail. I was really nervous, and I said, okay, I felt it in my spirit. But it was like God would solidify himself to them. And I went to a rehab and spoke not too long ago. And one of the guys that was in the jail with me confirmed it at the rehab. I said, guys, I'm going to get out June 17th. On June 17th, this is 2 months in, June 17th at about 11:58 p.m., they said, Layne, roll it up. And everybody was like, oh my goodness, God, he's real, he's real. And I was like, okay, God, done. You did what you wanted me to do. I did what you wanted me to do. Then I got COVID, almost died 11 months ago. I had 7 nurses come into my room. I was in the hospital for only 7 days. I had COVID for over 30 days. And 7 nurses came in my room, prayed for me. I asked a nurse, I was like, why are all these nurses coming in? She said, honey, there's only 2 nurses on this floor. And I was like, okay, God, thank you. And then they wanted to vent me. I denied it. And when I denied it, they got upset and called my wife. My wife said, if he doesn't want it, he's not going to get it. And he told me I had an 8% chance. And I said, well, I'm going to take my chances. And then all of a sudden, this respiratory therapist walks in and he says, I'm going to save your life tonight. No mask, nothing. This guy was like peppy. I crashed that night. I didn't stay up all night and use the breathing apparatus he gave me. I ended up falling asleep for 10 minutes, crashed. But when I woke up, there was all these people, alarms going off, and this nurse knelt down beside me and said, I'm going to administer something into your IV that'll slow your heart rate down. Because my oxygen went down to the 30s. My heart rate went high 200s. And she said, but do you mind if I pray for you? And I said, please. I knew I was dying. And when she started praying, I said, God, you get me out of here. I'll give you glory in every single thing I do. No matter what, you're going to get the glory out of it. 3 days later, I was out of the hospital with no oxygen.
Amazing.
And then God's just, He's brought me so far.
He has really called you.
And I'm walking in it. I want to walk in it.
So what's he doing in your life now? Where is he taking you? Because your passion right now is music.
My passion is music, but my passion's also telling people about God. And my passion is, I lead worship here at this church. It's Life Church here in Nashville.
And when did you start here? When did you get to Nashville?
Well, I've been on and off Nashville for over 15 years. I think that I tell people I had my true life-changing, I believe, acceptance of who God was in those 7 days in the hospital. And when I got out, I didn't know if I'd ever be able to sing again or not, but I was okay with that. But for some reason, He allowed that. And I've got this new CD called Bend or Break.
When did this release?
We just released it, I think it was a couple months ago. And we released one of the new songs July 1st called Between George Strait and George Jones. But we're about to start doing some worship because, see, I want to bring in the harvest. I want to when I do shows, I shock people that are out in the crowd because I say, okay, I'm going to take a minute and I'm going to tell you there's a man that saved my life, And I tell them about Jesus. I don't care if you're drunk or not, because I know that Jesus would walk into a bar and sit beside somebody. He would go to the prostitute and he would say, I love you. I love you. Look into my eyes. See a real man. Now go and sin no more. Because he did that. That's who I know Jesus as. I don't know him as this person we've put in a small box. He's real, and I want everybody to know. And God's going to get glory out of every bit of it. You know, we're going to release a worship album. We may do another country album, who knows? But wherever God opens the door, I'm going to walk through it. Ever since the day I told him I would give him glory in everything I did, it's like he's just opened the door and basically kicked the hinges in. You know, I've got a wife that supports me, who loves me through everything. I've got, you know, people who are behind me and support me, and just, they tell me, my manager, Christine, she's my spiritual mama. And she speaks into my life so much. And she said, this is your year. You're going to bring in the harvest. And I agree about that because of the 7 years being clean. That's the year of completion.
Yes, it is.
If I died tomorrow, I know where I'm going. And I'm okay with where I'm going.
Corey, what a blessing for me to share your story. You are going to reach those millions of people. I just want to thank you so much.
Well, thank you.
And God bless you.
God bless you too.
My friend, is someone touching your shoulder and asking you, what can I do for you? His name is Jesus. This is the day to give him your life. This is today's Nashville. This is faith.
Cornerstone Television wishes to thank all our faithful viewers whose consistent prayers and financial support have made this program possible.